I like trees, like a lot. I've always admired things like trees and clouds as elements of nature. They never fail to inspire me or spur my imagination. In architectural drawings, they make whatever section or elevation or perspective drawing that you're trying to do more grounded and more contextualized and just a little bit more real to the viewer. And since architecture is supposed to be about humans in the first place, it makes sense to try to make those drawings more digestible to the people looking at them. Adding things like trees to my drawings in school wasn't something that was encouraged by professors, but it felt true to my instincts as far as communicating the building and what its place in the world was. So when you're drawing a tree, it never has to be accurate. In fact, that's impossible because they're all different and they're always changing. One of my favorite architecture professors told us that trees are very forgiving when you try to draw or paint them, which is true because any flaw that you make in trying to draw the tree's shape, because of the entropy and the amount of detail in a tree, it really isn't a flaw at all. The idea is to embrace the imperfections that are present and to celebrate those as like making the tree unique and giving it its character. Instead of seeing a mistake as a mistake, see it as you and nature uniting, because there's a poetic inevitability in that anything that's drawn with a human hand is going to have flaws. So use those flaws to your advantage and make something beautiful. So these are some ways to draw some simple trees or some easily stylized trees. One way to start that's pretty unintimidating is just single line drawing. So if you start with just a single line for the ground and then a single line for a trunk, then there's a lot of directions you can go with this. You could do kind of a general outline of a tree, so like somewhat round but like irregular. All trees have irregularities. Like the shape of the leaves is going to create a million different shapes. Or you can go kind of a geometric route. So like if you have a trunk and then say you just draw like a giant square, and then so that represents kind of the middle body of all the leaves. And you can go with some medium squares around it. Kind of start to flesh it out, and then you can do smaller rectangles around those and kind of fill in the gaps, kind of just how leaves spread out from a tree. Or you could do the same thing with like circles. So you could do the main body again, and then smaller circles around it, just here and there. It shouldn't be symmetrical, or doesn't have to be perfect in any way. So and again, smaller circles kind of fill in the gaps and reach out. So that's one way to do it. Another thing you can do to start to add shading or dimensionality is if you start with a double line trunk, because then you can that can kind of evolve to like if you darken one side of that. It's like you have your two lines and then you maybe shade in this side, starts to give it some light quality. And again, there's many directions you can go with this. So you can start to like with this original shape that we started with, you can start with that again, and then whatever side that you shaded the trunk, you can maybe start to shade in that side of the tree as well. So kind of just scribbling on this side starts to give the tree a little bit more of a three-dimensional quality. Or if you want to do something like a pine tree or a fir tree, you can kind of start at the top. And one easy way to do this is, I guess this is more kind of along the lines of the single line drawings, but like there's the kind of classic Christmas tree zigzag you can do, where you get like bigger as you go down and then kind of stops before you hit the ground. So you can do that, and you could so like if you're going for a more dimensional look, or at least more shading, you can do that. Start out with that and then kind of go over it again, and you don't want to like try to match the lines. You're just kind of going for depth here, but kind of more lines you add, the more believable it starts to become. And again, if you wanted to shade it a little bit, then you just add some more lines on this side and on the bottom. And if you want to get really fancy, you can just like do a little shadow on the trunk right there. It's a pretty cool trick. Another way to go about the sort of amalgamous shape approach is if you do your weird crazy shape, and then you just kind of keep doing crazy shapes around the edge like that. Like, again, you don't want to exactly match what you just drew, but the more kind of scribbles you add and irregularities, the more character and detail the tree starts to have. One thing I was experimenting with lately is kind of multiple line drawings where they start. So you start parallel. You start with parallel lines for the trunk. Kind of evenly space them out, because this is a more kind of abstract way to look at it. But and you just go with straight or 45-degree angles from these lines to show like starting at the trunk and then the branches and then the smaller branches. So like if I go out here and then back up and then out here, it's like there's one branch, and it kind of you follow it all the way from like the end of the twig down to the trunk. It's all one line. So you can just kind of do a bunch of those and gradually start to fill in the space that the body of the tree should make up. So I could add another one out here, extend this line out a little bit more, and then start to mirror that a little bit like this. Just kind of make different variations and combinations of the angles. That's a little bit off, but it's okay. That's one way you could do it. You could also do that without straight lines. You could just use curved lines to do that. Again, you'd start out with a collection of lines for the trunk, and then follow kind of a similar path, but you could just make it curvy instead. So like something like that. And then as this one follows it for a while, but then breaks off at the end. And then this one follows that one for a while, and breaks off at the end. It's all about kind of where it diverges. Because it's really, if you think about the structure of a tree, it's really what it's doing. Everything kind of starts at the trunk, and then as it reaches out to try to get more light, it becomes smaller and more spread out. And one way you could add some depth to this is you start behind something that you already made. Like, so instead of creating a new line down here, just starting a line, like say right here, and kind of go up and do the same thing with the branches. And then you can do that for the straight line ones too. Kind of shows that, like, yeah, there's obviously going to be branches behind these, so that's one way to sort of articulate that. Last one I'll show is I used to draw a lot of these in grade school. Is a palm tree, kind of a crude palm tree. So think about a palm tree. It's pretty simple trunk, like just a couple lines will do, and then like they have those there's like lines of bark, or I'm not sure what that's called, but you'll see like little lines that break up the trunk. And then in the middle, this is a very like fourth grade understanding of what a palm tree is. So in the middle, I just had some coconuts, just circles, and then you can kind of shade them in if you want. And then the general shape of palm leaves or branches, I guess, is pretty long, but they curve down at the end. So you can just draw a few of those, like kind of as you go to one side or the other, like whatever way gravity would take the leaf. So that kind of makes your frame. And then as far as fleshing out the leaves, I would used to just draw like squiggly lines, like to kind of follow the line in some ways and diverge from it in others, like you can kind of go up and come back down. Just do all the leaves that way. You can maybe add some line work in here. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but so that's just kind of a bonus. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for drawing, and let me know how many times I said kind of while I was drawing those trees, because I could tell it was a lot.